What up, everyone? It's the DCEU podcast, man. And in this podcast, I'm going to do something very different. I'm going to criticize Warner Brothers. Because ever since the DCEU got started, it has been one bad decision after another with them and all the DCEU movies. First, there's the disaster with the Suicide Squad when they decided to do all the reshoots instead of when it being the way it was meant to be. Then it was with the Justice League, which was the biggest disaster I ever seen. Then there was canceling the whole Snyderverse, aka all the Justice League sequels, the Batman, all those movies that were going to lead up into a big final battle with Darkseid. And they're not continuing it, even though we got the Snyder Cut, and it proved to be 100 times more successful than the original Justice League movie we got in 2017. And the reasons to cancel these two movies are the dumbest I've ever heard. The Trench is canceled just because Aquaman 2 they think is going to be enough, and now they say that The New Gods is canceled just because they had that cameo of Darkseid in Justice League. That is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard. While some of the earlier DCEU movies garnered a bunch of negative reviews, all the earlier DCEU movies garnered a bunch of negative reviews, but it's still important to keep it the way that it was going. After all, the Flash movie was planned by Zack Snyder to restart the whole franchise. Well, not in the way like they're going to do it now, but in a way where it'd be more like the Flashpoint in the actual graphic novel, which also would have featured like the Amazon and Atlantean War, which nearly ruined the world. Another bone I have to pick with them is like how they reduced Cyborg's part in The Flash into just a cameo, when really it was supposed to have been a bigger part for him. I can't even stress about how The Trench and The New Gods would have expanded the DCU to even greater heights, to expand the mythos surrounding the heroes like Superman or Aquaman, but also like looking at how the world was created. Both movies could have acted as prequels to Man of Steel, well, especially The Trench, but also double especially for The New Gods, because The New Gods is a story that tells about how not only how the old gods grew old and how the new gods were born, but also like showing maybe even further back to how the universe was created, because in the comics it's always different from how it is theorized in the real world, with the Big Bang. The New Gods movie, we could have learned more, like not just who these characters are, but for all people who are new to comics, they'll finally get an idea about who to, like, not just tracking them out, but get an idea of Darkseid, the origins of Apocalypse. You'll see New Genesis and all the other new gods. Of course, we'll see like all the powers and abilities that they all hold. Get to see like the long bloody war between Apocalypse and New Genesis. The DCEU could have been greatly expanded with the new gods, like I mentioned earlier, about like learning about how the existence of the universe got started, seeing like the extent to Darkseid's mighty power, his history. Everything about him could have been expanded upon, even with Apocalypse and his generals. So much could have been shown. We could have had characters like Kilowback, Darkseid's son. And then there's the Trench. Now, the mythos of Aquaman in the DCU could have been greatly expanded upon also, learning more about Atlantis. I mean, we've learned about the Trench in Aquaman, but so much more could have been told. You see, like James Wong's like horror movie style being applied to a superhero universe. I mean, it would have been nothing like Brightburn, probably. I mean, that one was just like a straight up horror flick, more than superhero. But we could see like how he transitions his like archaic horror movie style into this franchise, because while he may have directed Aquaman, he's also directed all of the Saw movies. Many more could have been learned about Atlantis, like learning more about the Trench, like how they became like those mindless creatures, how the other underwater citizens evolved, like learning more about them back before Atlantis sank. I mean, so much potential has been lost thanks to Warner Brothers and their dumb decisions. They made some good calls, like with Shazam or the Birds of Prey, and yeah, the multiverse concept is really cool and all, but it's nothing compared to what could have been if Zack Snyder behind the wheel. And even though, like I mentioned earlier, they were getting a lot of reviews in the beginning, it was going to get better and better as they went down the road. Whenever there was going to be a new installment, it would have topped the other one, as we saw with the Snyder Cut. Zack Snyder's interpretation of both the DC universe and of each hero and villain was spot on. It kept getting better. More characters were getting serious. They were going to learn more about like who they were and what role they play in that universe. You got to see such great character development and such great foreshadowing as to what could have been. Like, it was stated that Clark and Lois' son was going to become the new Batman. I mean, that would have been cool to see. Superman's son could have been the best of both worlds. The biological son of the Man of Steel and the new Dark Knight of Gotham. Almost like Adonis Creed in the movie Creed, how he's the best of both worlds. He's the biological son of Apollo Creed, but at the same time, he was trained by Rocky Balboa, two of the biggest rivals in boxing history in the Rocky universe. And then the son of one became the best of both. It's reasons like this we need the DC. We need the Snyderverse back. Besides getting the Ayer cuts and getting all the Justice League sequels, we can have a proper cinematic universe, what the DCEU was meant to be, not what it's going into right now. The Ayer cut of Suicide Squad would have helped to set up so much more for the future of the DCEU back when it was originally going the way it was, rather than what it is now. Would have had like so many more moments with Joker and Harley Quinn, and just Joker altogether. Even El Diablo, who died in the movie, would have been kept alive at the end. So meaning that he could have done more. And maybe if they had a sequel to that movie, rather than The Suicide Squad, which was more of a, I guess you can say a reboot, we could have seen all these characters in the sequel, rather than the ones we're getting. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited to see them, but still, seeing guys like Will Smith as Deadshot, seeing Killer Croc, seeing all those guys, I would have loved to have seen it again. Another important thing with the Snyderverse, for Warner Brothers to restore, and they would stop making all these dumb decisions, is that with the New Gods, it could have been placed within that universe, sort of like a prequel to the entire franchise. Since given how the world is portrayed from the New Gods perspective, a prequel would be the best place for it. And then there's the actors who've left, like Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, is there Ray Fisher? If Warner Brothers hadn't made all these dumb decisions, we still have these guys. Their portrayals of these heroes are some of the greatest we've ever seen in DC. I mean, we've seen some great portrayals, but their portrayals are like on a different level. While movies like Shazam or The Birds of Prey are great and all, I feel like if Warner Brothers have stuck to the original style that the franchise started out as, I mean, so much more could have been expanded upon. We could have seen like greater stories being told, greater character developments. Well, yes, Shazam and all the others would be darker than what we got, and quite frankly, I'm mad enough to admit like the styles we have is probably like the best styles. But just imagine what it could have been like if those styles were darker. I mean, besides having like more gruesome fights, we also get to see like, I guess like deeper character development, like have a deeper look of each character's personality, how they grow, everything you can imagine and want to see in character development, it would have been there. All these actors had such great potential to bring their characters even further. We see, like, how they develop. We've seen the great job they did portraying these characters in the character development in the Snyder Cut. If it wasn't for Warner Brothers, we could have seen more of that. We could have seen, like, how they rise and fall, and with each installment came, like, more to the character, more emotion, more her trouble. The stakes would have been higher for them. Everything about these characters had so much potential to explore, but since their actors are gone, we won't see that. So thanks a lot, Warner Brothers. You're dragging this franchise through the mud. I mean, what's next? You're gonna cancel all the other movies? You're gonna replace all the directors and actors with some low-level ones, like how, they got rid of Zack Snyder and used Joss Whedon? Oh yeah, that was a great call. Now look at all the controversy surrounding both him and his Justice League movie. Not to mention the movie sucked. And it's sad because now it's up to Warner Brothers to get this franchise back on track. They need to listen to us fans. They need to understand that they're making the wrong choices here. Canceling these movies, replacing all the best cast and crew. Once they restore the Snyderverse and get back to how they were handling it the first time around, then, just then, will this franchise be as great as it's meant to be. If this keeps up, then maybe DC should do like Marvel and become their own independent studio, which would be sad after Warner Brothers and DC have been working together for so many years. But if this is the way they're going, maybe it's for the best. That's all I have to say. And thank you for listening. Be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Goodbye.